Hi, I'm Kat. This is the Service Design Show, episode 229.
We've all been in those projects where things just feel stuck. And often when we dig a bit deeper, it turns out that maybe, just maybe, every problem we thought was about process or the tech or the brief is actually a people problem. What to do with that? That's what we're going to explore in this episode. Hi, if you're new here, welcome to the Service Design Show, where we invite the brightest minds in our field and explore what's truly needed to design great services that resonate with people, push businesses forward, and honor our planet. Our guest today, Kat Thackray, has been in the service design trenches for over a decade, navigating complex, large-scale projects, especially within the public sector. So she's seen a thing or two, but what's really interesting for our conversation today is her current focus. She is now using all that experience into understanding and improving how the people and organizations actually do the work. It's a perspective that was shaped when she met a coach who helped her see a path beyond the traditional director level roles, encouraging her to forge her own way. And when she's not diving deep into team dynamics, you might be surprised to hear that she played the cello, climbed cliffs, and even has a past in aerial circus. I think that this is the blend of grounded experience and a unique, quite adventurous outlook that you'll enjoy in today's conversation. So we'll be diving deep into her insights on creating the right conditions for design to truly flourish. We'll explore what this often unseen environmental work actually looks like in our day-to-day projects, why this crucial work often gets overlooked, and the real impact that has on our teams, practical ways we can all get better at fostering these healthier, more productive team environments. If we, as service design professionals, should be the ones owning this, or if we need to create new roles, and why something as simple as giving this work a proper name could be game-changing. A part that resonated with me in our chat with Kat was her honesty about the challenges she faced, especially when working as a subcontractor. She gets really practical about navigating those tricky power dynamics when what you know needs to be done, this environmental work, isn't what you've been explicitly hired to deliver. I think this is a situation many of us can relate to, whether you're an in-house designer trying to influence across silos or a consultant navigating client expectations. I found this a really insightful campfire conversation, and I invite you to join me and Kat for it. I'll catch you on the other side for a few closing reflections. I'm your host, Mark Fontijn, and you are listening to the Service Design Show. Welcome to the show, Kat.
Thanks very much, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here.
You have shared a very inspiring wish with me, which I'm going to look at my notes and cheat a little bit. You shared the wish that the work that goes into creating the environment for the work also becomes visible, valued, and even thought as the design work itself. What do we mean? What do you mean when you talk about the work about creating the environment for the work itself?
Yes, that's a good question. So this goes all the way back to my first mentor many, many years ago, a lovely, lovely man called Eric Folger. And he said to me, I don't know the percentage, I've made up the percentage, 80% of the work is creating the environment for design to happen in. And I've carried that through my career with me, and I have seen just how true it is. And when I say that, what I mean is, I'll give you an example. So I started a really challenging project a couple of years ago. It was a new problem. It was in the policy space, and we had a title for the project, and no one could agree what those three words meant. So that was the beginning, and we had people from this department who'd never worked with people from this department, but they knew they didn't like them, right? And then we had a bunch of consultants. I was there as a consultant who were, you were a little bit suspicious of them, and then we had these people who had this bit of knowledge but not this bit of knowledge, and it took this team 8 weeks to decide what the words ought to mean. That kind of challenge. And at the end of that project, I made a prototype, and I knocked it up. I think I was on the train up, an hour and a half, quick, smash it together. All right, this sort of explains my thinking. And a couple of the project leads said stuff like, this is amazing. This prototype is the best thing to come out of this project. And I remember thinking at the time, no, the work that I have been doing is to get you to the point where I can produce something that you two people both think is a good summation of where we need to go in the future. And that work has been making up a meeting for you to come to every week to have a user research catch up, which it was not a user research catch up. We had a user researcher join the team, and I had to say to him quite quietly after one of them, James, we don't actually want to talk to these guys about user research. We want them to talk to each other. So, if there is anything, then we'll have a different meeting for that. And it was doing a lot of sort of a kind of mediation type work and gently saying, oh, you shared this with me when we were having a conversation, and this, I'm trying not to use names here, which makes so I'm doing a lot of waving with my arms, but bringing in people's fears and concerns and frustrations into the shared space calmly and gently and supportively so that we could all work through them together. And it was that work of helping people say things out loud and helping people hear each other and helping get them to a place where they felt that they were working on the same thing and on the same problem as a team. That was actually the majority of what I had been doing for those 8 weeks. And then I did this little prototype. Oh, the prototype, amazing. So that's what I mean.
I think a lot of us will be able to relate to this type of unseen work. I'm curious, like, out of all the possible topics that you could champion around service design, like, what led you to this path? Like, when did you realize that this is a thing and that this is a thing worth pursuing and spending your time and energy on?
There are some. I've had experience as a product designer, as an experience designer, and as a service designer, and as a user researcher across my career. And there are people within that field who get really into things like accessibility or the specific placement of a button. And, that's really, really important. And I'm very grateful those people exist, because then they can tell me where to put the buttons and how to make the accessibility good. But the thing that has always got me going about this work is the people. And another one of my colleagues, Sarah Domenico, said to me last year, I think, there's no point doing good work if nobody cares. So I think throughout my career, I transitioned from focusing on the sort of the locus of my concern for people being the user to actually really broadening that, because I can have as much empathy for the user as I want. But if I'm bringing that knowledge and those insights into a room where they're not going to land softly, that work is wasted. And I think I've met that challenge in really different ways throughout my career. So it might be that the team is not working together. It might be that the leadership is maybe feeling a bit threatened by this new kind of, oh, we've got some service designers now. Like, well, this is my innovation project. Or it might be a financial thing. We can't afford to have any difficult conversations about what direction we need to take with the project. But there's a quote, and I always forget whose this is, but broadly speaking, it goes, whatever problem they tell you it's a people problem. And so I think I've just kept tripping over different versions of people problems throughout my whole career, and that's where I've ended up. I think that's what I've ended up being good at. And then when I met my coach, she's called Jess Adams. She's great. She really helped me think about, well, what problems in the world do you feel really exercised about and passionate about? And what are you good at? And how do you bring those two things together? And that's sort of how I've landed on this being the work that I feel I can do.
It's interesting, and I want to get back to that in a second, where you mentioned that like every problem is a people problem. Related to what we are discussing, I'm curious to hear, like, what do you feel, what does success look like? So when this actually works, when this is properly designed, like what do we have compared to maybe the status quo or how things are by default?
I think the status quo, as I have observed it, is you put a bunch of people together in a, not even a room now, a virtual room, and you say, you're a team, here's a problem, off you go. And you don't put any support in place for the relational aspects of that encounter. You have got a bunch of people from different knowledge backgrounds, from different departments, so with different goals and objectives, and who have got different life circumstances going on, and so have different boundaries around work and how much work they have capacity to do. And then the team kind of muddles through, right? Work does get done, but it takes a really long time, and it's quite painful for everyone involved. Am I allowed to swear?
And we can bleep things out if you
Okay.
don't.
I'll try not to. I'll try not to. Painful was the gentle version of what I was going to say there. So I think that's the status quo, and I think there are a lot of, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'll come back around in a minute. There are a lot of problems that the world is working to solve right now that are really complex, that are interdisciplinary, that require huge amounts of knowledge from really disparate parts of the knowledge ecosystem to be brought together within a huge amount of complexity and ambiguity, and for a group of people to find a way forward. And the last couple of years, I've been working within broadly the environmental policy space, and there's not a good answer. This isn't a situation where you get some evidence from over here, and oh look, we should definitely go this way, and everyone's agreed, and nobody's got any challenges with that. It's tricky, right? You need to find the best solution out of a range of imperfect solutions, and that can be, if you haven't got a team that's working really well together, that just means loops and loops and loops and loops. And these are problems that we need to solve fast. You know, we've got triple planetary crisis, etc., etc. It's happening. So that's what happens when the status quo is just left to happen. When you've got people in there who are aware that their job is to ease that relational stuff, is to be the glue between this person who thinks in this direction and who thinks in this way, and this person who's got a totally different knowledge background and totally different set of beliefs. Your job is to find the place where they can come together, and you're doing that across lots and lots of different axes. We've got a group of people doing that across lots and lots of different axes. You are working to create a space, I'm going to say psychological safety here because of course I am, where the team can acknowledge that they're working complexity. They don't know the answer. That is really, really hard for a lot of people. Then it just gets faster and you get to better solutions because nobody is fighting for the thing that they believe in because they've got the shell up or they've got the mask on, which means that they can't accept and acknowledge that they don't know some key bits of information, or they're not sharing the thing that makes their department look bad because they've been told not to do that. It's just about getting to better solutions faster, I think.
So if that's the case, and we know that organizations, for-profit, non-profit, are always either looking to sort of decrease spending, do things more efficiently, invest a lot in, I don't know, making sure that IT systems work together. They are optimizing a lot of processes. Optimizing this process sounds like a no-brainer, and still it's not happening, at least not at the scale that you would like to see. Why do you think that is? Why aren't organizations yet recognizing this as important and valuable and investing in it? Maybe that's the key part.
It's quite pink and fluffy, isn't it?
I don't know. Is it?
I think so. I kind of came of age in my career in big financial organizations, and pink and fluffy was definitely a term that I heard used as the standard description of anything that was to do with people. I think we've come a long way since then. I'm 36, so that would have been 18 years ago or so. But I think a few things. We still devalue people work and caring adjacent work. We have a system of work which is sort of, it's not necessarily set up to do the things that we need to do today.
Can you give an example?
Yeah, I'm reading Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber at the moment, and I'm trying to sort of find a way to explain his points in there without totally misrepresenting the sort of main theories in the book. And I don't know if that's a helpful diversion, actually. I think what I'm trying to say is that there are a lot of people still in power in organizations who have got there by knowing the answer, or at least saying they know the answer, and then getting things to happen. It's my observation of, again, this is a very broad brushstroke, but traditionally, I'm going to say, quote marks, masculine leadership style, which the remnants of are still with us a little bit. And that's about productivity, and it's about performance, and we still have sort of the legacy of time and motion studies with us, right? You've got your man who comes into your factory and says, well, if this person didn't have to turn 90 degrees between doing these two tasks, then that action could be carried out much further. And by the way, people are spending upwards of 4 minutes in the toilets, and do we really think it takes that long to have a pee? So it looks less efficient to pay money for a role, or to spend time just looking at how people work together. So that's thing one. Thing two is it doesn't have a name. So I don't know what to call it. I know that there are a lot of people working in this space, and there is a lot of data about how happier teams are more innovative, and how teams which experience psychological safety perform much, much better. We've known this since Amy Edmondson's studies in the 2000s somewhere. This isn't new news, but it's not a role name. So James Lang, who you spoke to a couple of episodes ago, gave me the example of user research ops. So before, this was just work that all the researchers were doing, right? And there is a totally different skill set. If you like having really in-depth wandering conversations with people to uncover their needs, you do not probably like sending 8,000 emails, trying to schedule 14 participants around each other and making sure that all of the right things are saved in the right place and nobody's got access to data that they shouldn't have done. By that, you can probably tell which side I fall on. But once someone came up with the name research ops, and then all of a sudden this is a role that we need, and I don't think we've got the work formalized and named well enough for people to say, we need one of those in our team. I could ramble a lot more, but I think those are probably the two main ones.
So let's maybe dissect a little bit more what this type of work looks like. If we know the building blocks, we might be able to find the name. So what is that work?
This is where I struggle, because the answer is it depends. I think the work is reading the room. So someone needs to be able to go into an unfamiliar circumstance with an unfamiliar set of people, and they need to very quickly understand the small p politics, the relationship dynamics, the power dynamics, and the blockers. So there's a lot of and that's conversations, that's presence in meetings, that's listening, that's asking gently difficult questions. I find one-on-one stakeholder interviews incredibly valuable as a tool when doing that work. If I can get everyone aside for an hour or so one-on-one, then I learn a lot more than I learn if I'm having to do it all in by just sort of being in the meetings. I think there's your classic facilitation work as well. So the standard service design tools of your workshops around what are our challenges, what are our blockers, that is in there as well. I think there is I don't know if it's correct to say sort of mediation or arbitration, but there's definitely a skill around sitting in a room with two people who don't agree and working to get to points of agreement and points of difference, but okay, we can hold that now. I like the framework of dialogic versus dialectic speech.
What is that?
I came across it in Richard Sennett's book Together about collaboration or cooperation, and I always get them the wrong way around. One is, I think, a dialectic speech is your traditional sort of essay format. You have your thesis, you have your counter thesis, and you have your synthesis. And what you're doing is you're placing two points in opposition, and then you're kind of seeing which one wins. Whereas with, let's say, dialogic speech, the other one, you are kind of all putting all of the opinions and points of knowledge into a big pot, and then you stir the pot around, and then what comes out of the pot is something that nobody was advocating for, nobody would have been fighting for at the beginning. So it's this speech as a way to create new knowledge, rather than to win an argument. And I find that a really helpful sort of framing for this work. What else is in there?
So
I would say...
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Well,
the other thing...
Yeah, go ahead.
The other thing, which is quite different from the others, which is why I've tried to just interject with it, is I think self-knowledge is a really important part of it as well. Understanding how you show up and the biases and the frustrations and the things you believe about yourself and how they show up in the world of work, I think is an important sort of prerequisite to being able to do that well with others. That's the end.
Okay. So that's a lot. And what emerged in my mind when you were sharing this is probably the overused phrase of being a quote unquote people manager, which I think has been used a lot for people who need to lead teams or departments, that they need to be a people manager. So it sounds like that kind of responsibility is maybe already placed in somebody's role or function? Question mark. What do you feel? What does design or designers have to do here? Why us?
I think I'm going to offer a counterpoint to that, because I've always had a people manager my whole career, and that people manager has never, am I right in that? Almost never been involved in the projects that I've been working in, and they've only had responsibility for me. So I think, and if you extrapolate that to, you've got your group or your team of people, and they've all got their own different people managers who never speak to each other because they're in totally different companies, let alone departments, then what they're not doing is they're not managing the group. They are maybe helping me with my career aspirations. There's someone I can go to if I've got a particular problem or if I need to vent about someone. But what they're not doing is they're not looking at the group and working out how to help that group of people work better together and resolve the relational problems that exist within that space. And I think that's what I have been doing as a designer. Do I think that means it needs to be designers' work? I think it could be a separate role, but as the designer, your job, this is how I've always seen my job. My job is to help a group of people make the best decision that they can about what to do.
Mm.
And in order to achieve that, someone has to do that work. And if it's not happening elsewhere, then I've found myself taking it on. So I think that's the difference. But feel free to disagree with me.
I completely see where you're coming from, and especially now that the challenges are becoming so interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, you're working with people that you might never have seen from completely different departments. It makes total sense that your, I don't know, team manager, who is a people manager, isn't looking at the group dynamic of diverse teams. The the other thing that comes to my mind now, I like to think in analogies, and sports is something that I often refer to. Like if you look at sports teams, whether it's soccer, basketball, whatever, the role of the coach or the manager or the head coach often is, well, to come up with a strategy, but to also make sure that every player together is able to win as a team. So it's like that's the thing that's also coming to mind here. The role that you need, and somebody is taking it implicitly or explicitly, sort of like a team coach, team manager. I don't know if those are the right words, but is that also in the line of thinking that you have?
I like that. I like team coach because I think that's maybe assigning more agency than the role has if you have just someone who's in the team and trying to sort of stealth do this, which is where I found myself. And you can do it from there. There's a lot you can do from being in a position where you're just kind of gradually winning people's trust and they're able to confide in you and bring you the problems that they need to solve. And they see that you can wrap those into the solution that you're creating on behalf of the whole team. But what you can't do is you can't sort of go into that with really open conversations and say, right, I'm here to help make sure the team is working together. And so let's have a talk about what you feel your strengths are and what you're worried about, and sort of begin with a bit more of a blank slate. So I think that it's a slightly different role, just in terms of the amount of structural power that I'm imagining someone with the title of team coach would have. But I think it's a good description for the kind of work that needs to happen. Got a group of people, they all need different things, they all bring different things. You've all got the same goal. How do we figure out how to get here? I'm thinking of Ted Lasso. Of course, if anyone's seen that TV show.
I haven't yet. I heard a lot about it. What is the analogy with Ted Lasso?
He doesn't really know anything about football. So he comes to coach a soccer team in somewhere in London, I think. But what he does do is it's all about the psychological stuff. So he's helping the team kind of, I don't know, express themselves, and, you know, that it's okay to be a human. You can bring your full self to work as this, you know, soccer player, rather than he's focusing on specific tactics. He's much more about the people and the relationships and the psychology.
This also brings up the question that if this is so much about relationships, trust, people, group dynamics, we're maybe straying into areas of expertise like, I don't know, therapy, psychology, behavioral science. Like, where do you draw the line between, okay, this is something that I as a design professional can still handle and am responsible for, versus, okay, we actually need somebody who knows what they're doing?
Yes. And it's interesting you chose those three examples, because those are three areas that I have studied, not necessarily formally, but they're three areas where I've realized if I knew more about this, I would be better at my job. So I wonder if it's more about, and I don't wonder, I firmly believe that perhaps something in here is expanding the skill set that we need, whoever's doing this role, to have, right? I think as designers, we're taught research techniques, we're taught, I know there's a bit of division between user research and service design now. That wasn't the case when I was kind of a baby designer. But we're taught how to generate insight from direct first-hand research. We're taught how to help groups of people have ideas. We're taught about techniques for kind of group creativity. We are taught about prototyping and mental models and, you know, all of the, I've had so many arguments. Is this a task map or is it I don't care. It's always how I've fallen there. I guess ways of making the complex visible, and then prototyping techniques. That's in the designer's explicit handbag, tool
Mm-hmm.
bag.
Mm-hmm. Toolkit.
But what we're
Yeah.
not expected to need is psychology, is counselling. And I'm not by any means a trained counsellor, but I've had enough counselling, and I have spoken to counsellors, and I have read about the underlying theory, that I sort of see what's going on, and how the relationship helps people to, how to ask the questions and how to receive the responses, and what to do in that dynamic that isn't fixing someone's problem, but is allowing them to share what it is with you. And behavioral economics and behavioral psychology as well. Why do we do what we do? Because that's important. It's important in groups. It's important at population scale. We should be teaching this stuff explicitly if we want people to be doing this work well.
And if we are teaching this to upcoming service design professionals, I'm also seeing that in other conversations, people, for instance, are arguing or sort of making the case, for instance, that service designers need to know more about business. And I'm seeing people advocate that designers need to know more about operations and about marketing. So the toolkit becomes like the toolkits, or it becomes quite a lot, quite a big bag of expertise and knowledge and skills that we need to have. So how do you see this? Like, can we be a jack of all trades?
I don't have strong opinions on this one, so I'm not going to say that what I believe is true. But I sort of see. I think designers have had to do a lot, right? That work of getting a group of people to the right way forward has got a huge amount in it. And I have a professional qualification in strategic marketing, so again, it's like, yes, you do. I see that, and I run a business, so. I'm not very good at operations. At some point it becomes too much, right? Or at some point I am me. I'm really interested in people. I'm really interested in strategy. I have found that I need to understand how organizations work in order to design solutions that work within them. Because if you design a solution that doesn't work for the organization, it doesn't matter how much it works for the customer. So that works for me because I'm a person with my proclivities and my interests and my academic background. But going back to the people who are really interested in accessibility, probably they don't need to know so much about marketing. And there will be, I don't know that I'm advocating for a further fragmenting of the sort of the service design role, but I wonder if we need to start naming different flavors, perhaps, so that we can put the right people in the right spaces.
I would say that absolutely makes sense, just as we are finally embracing design ops more and more, research ops more and more. It's good to identify and sort of signal to the organizations that this work happens, and it's better to do it well and do it consciously and do it with people who have the skills. And it sounds like the same goes here. This somehow tends to be work that service design professionals are good at, or sort of feel they need to do, or that they are doing it already. Maybe it's the empathy aspect, or maybe it's like they're sensitive to reading the room. And if you would have a role that might be called a team coach next to a project manager, that would be quite an interesting combination, by the way, then at least you have something, somebody who can own this responsibility. But yeah, I don't know if it's a fragmentation, it's a specialization, maybe. Like, that's probably, I don't know, a more positive way to frame it. What do you think?
Specialization, I like, yes. I'm still smarting from being told that I wasn't allowed to do research anymore if I was going to do service design in government projects. So I'm a bit grumpy about the whole thing, but I'll take specialization.
I'm curious, could you share a few stories on what is in your kit that you're doing to I don't know, to implement this? How are you implementing better team dynamics, designing better team dynamics?
As in sort of actionable things that people could go away and start doing if they're
Or
not doing
share
them
us a
already.
story where you tried to implement this and where it miserably failed and you learned a hard-won lesson. We're looking for all kinds of stories.
I would say the thing that is the most challenging for me is the contractual situation and the power dynamics. So I have, I my from my perspective, the service design world has shifted a little bit throughout the last sort of 10 years. And a lot of the work that I have ended up doing has been through bigger tech companies. So there's a big tech project, and then, oh, we need some designers to help us create this. And so the company I've worked for doesn't do tech. So we've ended up working in partnership with these bigger organizations who hold the contracts. And I think that the biggest lesson that I've learned there is that a lot of the work that you need to do as a team coach looks threatening to someone who thinks that that's their relationship. So if you're setting up conversations with senior people, if you're getting people one-on-one in a room, because you can't be supervised by the account manager for that massive project at this huge company, because that's totally sort of undermines the whole purpose of the meeting, then I have had some quite snarky emails sent to my boss. Kat should not be doing this. So that's a real challenge, is finding ways to build the trust and to build the relationships that don't directly threaten the people who are paying for my presence, because they haven't bought a team coach. They think they've bought a service designer, and so they want some prototypes, and it's probably a service blueprint. Like, I need to be drawing some boxes on a bit of paper or on a Miro board, and I need to be putting some arrows between those boxes. Thank you very much. Job done. Go home. So that's a challenge. Yeah.
And would you you could say, okay, if that is what I'm hired for, I'll stick with that and make it somebody else's responsibility to manage the team dynamic stuff, the relational stuff. But you don't.
I don't like being told what to do, Mark. I have all my life had a bit of a problem with authority when the purpose of that authority is to enforce a power dynamic that doesn't help the situation. So, yes, one could, and lots of people, I'm sure, probably do make that choice. They look at their situation, they look at the job they've been brought in to do, and they think, well, this team is broken. That's not on me.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't point fingers and tell them they're wrong to do that. And I think it's back to this specialization, right? Some people, that work is what excites them and what gets them out of bed in the morning. It's really hard. Some people just look at a people problem and think, I don't know what to do here.
Mm-hmm.
If I stick my big size 9s in, I'm going to make this worse, not better. And we need all sorts of people, and that's totally fine. But I think the thing is that my job is infinitely more difficult if the team I'm working in is not successful. I don't mean, like, does it work?
Mm-hmm.
Can it do its job well? If everyone is getting on with each other and all of the secrets are out in the open and we all know what's going on and we all agree on the goal, then I can do a really good job. And it's important to me to do a really good job. And I have the interest and I have the skills to stick my big size 9s in there and by and large make things better, with or without a minor telling off every now and again.
So how do you navigate those power dynamics?
It's a good question. I do a tactical grovel if I need to.
What does that mean?
As in, if I know I need to apologize and say you're totally right and I shouldn't have done that, or you're the boss here, don't worry. If you would like me to run everything past you, then I'm really happy to run everything past you. I was just trying to do this and this and this, and here's the. But of course, if I will say what needs to be said, and I will act on that. If someone said I do need you to run all the meetings past me, fine, we can do that. I think this is something that I have learned in the last 5 years as a young designer. Before I had all the counselling that I've had, I would have felt very, my ego would have got in the way of me being able to do that. And I would have stood there and I would have said, well, it's wrong. This is absolute nonsense. Why are they making me do this? They're not, blah, blah, blah. Whereas I am older, I am more mature, I'm going to look back on this conversation in 10 years and laugh at myself, but at the ripe old age of 36. But I do find that I'm much more able to just sort of recognize, okay, I've triggered something here. Say what needs, like, make it go away, do what you need to do to make it go away. And that's not a reflection on me. And it's just the dynamic that we're in, and that needs to happen. Is there anything else I do to navigate the politics? I guess building relationships of trust with the people who are in those gatekeeping positions as well. That's sometimes, that's again, if they think they've bought a service designer, then that can be challenging. But I guess clear communication, showing up, backing them, making it really obvious that you're on their side, you're there to help them look good in front of their client, being explicit about some of that stuff, rather than, I'm not here like trying to have this conversation to, you know, steal this client away from you or to make you look bad or anything, you know. So it's usually shown up in terms of me having conversations with people that I quote unquote shouldn't be having conversations with, and I think there's a lot of smoothing that can be done there.
Smoothing in which way?
So just the kind of things that I've mentioned. Just, okay, right, so we have a problem here. If I want to talk to the head of X, then this person is going to say that that's not something that they're comfortable with me doing. How can I get them comfortable with it? Or do I need to actually find a different person? So if I can't talk to the head of X, can I talk to the next person, the next level down? Can I find a justifiable reason to do with the quote unquote service design work that I'm doing, that I have to have a conversation with this person's direct report, so that I am understanding what that center of power, for want of a better word, needs out of this project, without being seen to be kind of going above someone's head. So it's about finding ways to build relationships in the areas you need, and finding ways to help people feel like you're not a threat. Yeah.
What have you found? When do people feel most threatened?
When there's money at stake, okay. I think. Mm-hmm. I have found, so I'm comparing direct work, i.e. where the client has sort of paid for a project that we're delivering directly as a consultancy, where it's their budget, we've got, you know, X amount of pounds to spend delivering the thing that they want. And in those situations, I've been really free to, right, I need to go and talk to your head of, let's say, clinical safety. And where's the compliance department? I need to find the compliance department. And, you know, can I go and talk to this organization that is a totally different one? And we're going to have this meeting with all of these people, and I'm going to lead it. Totally fine. We're paying you to do a job. Clearly, this is what you need to do a job. Crack on. Whereas there's something about the subcontracting relationship which I think it just gets in the way. I don't know whether it's about kind of financial risk, you know, if it's about the level of trust that you would need is always going to be mediated in a kind of yucky way by the fact that you've got two levels of, you know, two levels of that contract, or whether there's things that you, if there's client consultancy, you're able to be relatively open. Everything the client says to you, you know about, whereas that's not true, especially as, you know, as a director. If there's a huge amount of account risk, I know about it. It's my problem. Whereas if you're working through a sort of a bigger consultancy, then they might know that there's a huge amount of account risk there, and that's not been shared with you for very good reasons. So I think something about contracts, financial, like there being money in it, but it's always been on that side that I've found that this work needs to, that sort of smoothing needs to happen.
I'm quite sure that this also exists within people who are working in-house within organizations and trying to understand cross-silo success factors, agendas. Money is at play in-house as well. So I don't think that this is only related to doing contract work, but I don't know, the nuances might be different there. Now, we already talked about, okay, so what is this? What is this emerging new field, craft, skill? I've heard you say things like therapy, counseling, behavioral science, group dynamic, facilitation, design. We probably forgot a few other things that we need to put into the mixer. What is your current thinking about this? Because you've done a lot of thinking. Like, what are some good naming candidates, and yeah, which direction are we heading in?
So I think team coach is the winner, honestly.
Well,
I'll
there
tell
you
you
go.
Mark has solved it. I'll tell you the two that I had come up with. Culture design, I've seen other people use. It's too big. It's in, you say organizational culture, and it's not the same, is it? And then the other thinking was around sort of a team producer role. So,
Team orchestrator.
I was thinking about a producer as being someone who just kind of makes sure everyone has everything that they need.
Mm.
And I was thinking that's maybe a more like purchasable name. If you say we need a team producer versus we need a culture designer, thinking about that efficiency and productivity lens that a lot of organizations still measure through. So those are my other two candidates, but I'm not particularly wedded to either of them.
And you also mentioned James Lang, who was recently here on the show to talk about community design and the collective that he sort of co-founded. Sounds like you were inspired by that as well. Is that something that you're looking into as well, to sort of find your people?
Yeah, so my colleague Kate introduced me to James once when I said, I'm starting a business, it's going to be doing this. She said, oh, you should talk to James. And we had a lovely conversation. And I think the thing that James really inspired me to do is to think bigger. I'd been working with a coach. So my coach works with sort of female founders. So she'd been helping me shape my thoughts into, well, what does this look like as a business? And the thing that James prompted me to think about, and has prompted me to think about since, is what would this be like if it was bigger than just me? How could this be something that gains momentum, that has opportunities for other people to kind of come under an umbrella or to come under a wing? What can I orchestrate here? So one of the things that I would love to do is to have this be the new research ops, right? If it's just me running a business doing this, fine. But I think that the world needs this work to be recognized, and it needs it to be done. And that means that there need to be people who are doing it. And I'm not, if anyone's like, well, I agree with like 60% of what she said, but she's got this and this and this and this wrong. I don't care about that. I do this my way. Other people will be doing it their way. But I would really love for there to be a place for us to come together that we say, right, we are all doing this work. This is what needs done, and this is how we do it, and let's share. Let's build it up together.
And is there already a place where people could meet you or get together, or like? Let's assume that there will be hundreds of thousands people listening to this episode, getting excited about what you're sharing and want to sort of go into action mode. What should I do?
Well, I knew you were going to ask me this as I was talking, and I thought, I don't have anything. So the best thing to do would be to go to the website or to find me on LinkedIn and just to reach out, and I'll figure something out, or someone else can figure something out and I can join in. I don't have to own it. But so it's peopleequalspurpose.com is the website.
All right. And of course, we'll link your LinkedIn bio and the website in the show notes. If we sort of try to, it's not tying the knot, but sort of circle back to the start and look at your experiences doing this, and somebody would approach you and say, Kat, this sounds amazing. Yes, I recognize what you're saying. This is super important. I want to get better at this as well. Like, what is the first step or the most important piece of advice that you'd give them?
My gut says, know yourself, apply this to yourself, find professional support if you need it. Do a lot of reflection. Think about what you bring to work and why you bring it and what triggers you and why you find yourself in arguments that you shouldn't be in when you look back on it. What wakes you up at 4 o'clock in the morning thinking, oh God, I did that. It's that, and then develop the compassion for yourself, because that's what you'll need to be able to extend to other people in those same circumstances with different things. That's the hard answer. If you want the maybe easier answer, is this easier? I don't know. But the more you can learn about people and why we do what we do and why we are the way we are and what we can do about it, then the better.
And would you have a starting point for that?
Well, I write a newsletter called The Shift, which is it's very broad, but sort of the theme that unifies my thinking is why are we how we are and what can we do about it? Think like the classic books like Thinking Fast and Slow, that's my mind's gone totally blank.
Thinking Fast and Slow is quite a intense book.
Yeah, the next one I was going to recommend is about this thick, and it's about linguistics. Follow your interest, follow your own interest. If you see a book, you see a podcast, you see something, you think, yeah, that's going to teach me something interesting. It's probably going to teach you something interesting. I would direct you in the people space. And we've talked about mediation. We've talked about different types of dialectic conversations. We've talked about arbitration. We've talked about facilitation. We've talked about psychology. There's so many areas. Learning about these will make you better at this work, and you can pick the one that you like the most to start with.
Kat, I hope that in the next edition of your newsletter, there will be a resources list inspired by this episode, because I think a lot of people will already find that really helpful and valuable. You've been through this, you've been reading a lot, digesting, making sense. So I don't know if you already have a reading list or resource list, but if not, then this is an invitation to publish it.
That's a great prompt. Thank you, Mark. I will do that.
All right. And now before we leave off, the thing that we like to end with is a question for us to linger on after this episode, after we're done doing the dishes, after we're done walking the dog or cleaning the rest of the kitchen. Like, what is it that you'd like us to think about?
This is my end of interview question when I'm doing the interviewing, which is, what should I have asked you that I haven't asked you, or what should we be talking about that we're not talking about? So what have I missed? What do I need to incorporate into this that we haven't talked about so far?
Well, I hope a lot of us will leave a short comment on this video or podcast, and we'll see which questions we haven't asked or addressed yet. Kat, thanks. I know that you are not alone in this mission. I know that there are a lot of people out there who are already doing this and maybe finally are seeing recognition, and we need a lot more recognition and practice around this field, whatever it might end up being called. Thanks for coming on, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of your work in the future.
Thanks very much, Mark. It's been a real pleasure talking to you.
What really lingers with me is this idea Kat brought up, and that we've explored around the team coach. Perhaps not always a formal title we see, but a function that feels increasingly vital. As our projects get more complex and interdisciplinary, consciously designing the environment for collaboration as Kat champions isn't just a nice have. It's becoming a core component of successful outcomes. She also reminded us that there's a wealth of knowledge in adjacent fields we can draw upon to get better at this. So once again, I want to give a huge thank you to Kat for her openness and for pushing us to look at this deeper layer of our work. It certainly gives me a sense of optimism about how we can grow and evolve our practice. If you've enjoyed today's conversation, you can do me one big favor. Click that like button on this video and leave a short comment if you haven't done so already. Not to feed the YouTube algorithm, but just to let me know whether or not we are on the right track by addressing topics like this. Finally, before we part ways, please take a moment to reflect and celebrate that by joining us today, you have directed your attention towards learning and growing as a professional. So from everyone who you are going to impact through your work, thank you for taking the time and making the commitment. My name is Mark Fontijn, and I look forward to having you with us for a new conversation on the Service Design Show. Take care and see you soon.